Shalom from Israel, I'm Ariel Ben Abraham. This week we read Parshat Naso. Naso continues the counting of the tribe of the Levites, which started at the end of last week's Parshat Bamidbar. There was a census, as we have said before last week, of the children of Israel, every tribe. After that census, in other words, in that census, the members of the tribe of Levi were not counted. They were counted separately. Like the last tribe who was counted was Levi. So, as we have said before also, they have 4 clans of the Levites, which represents the 4 children of Levi, the third son of Jacob, Israel. So, the parasha begins with the continuation of the counting of the Levites, and after that counting, which is one of the most important parts of this portion, it's an admonition, a warning, so kind of a reminder actually for all the children of Israel. A very important reminder which is about the purification of the camp, meaning the place where the children of Israel were staying every time that they were moving in the desert. So in summary, our sages summarizes this paragraph regarding the purification of the camp. So you had, again, everything that we have read before in the parashas of the Parshat of the book of Bamidbar had to deal with our connection with God. So being connected with God, we have to re-emphasize this, requires sacredness. Excuse me, sacredness. So in Parashat Kedoshim, God commands us to be sacred, because He is our God who is sacred. And we define sacred as the goodness and the goodness of the purity, the purest thing that we have in consciousness. Sounds like a pretty obvious statement. It's like, what would it be pure besides goodness? So it's like everything that is good is pure. The purity is inherent to goodness. So everything contrary or opposite to goodness is not pure. As simple as that. And we know that. So that there's nothing intricate or complicated to understand this. So the warning, as we were saying, which is against a reminder about keeping ourselves pure, sacred, good, is to remove those men and women who are not pure, basically. And it makes perfect sense. We have to emphasize and re-emphasize that Judaism, and like the teachings of the Torah, which is Judaism basically, establish a clear distinction between good and evil. It's pretty, as we have said many times before, and we will keep continuing repeating, it's pretty black and white. There is no gray here. We have to be pure, we have to be good. That's the premise for what's coming. That's the cause, and that is the effect. That's the whole point of the Torah. If you read, what is it? What's the point? Love your neighbor as yourself, for instance. One of our sages said 2,000 years ago, when somebody asked him, so would you summarize the Torah in 1 second, one phrase? So do not do unto others what you don't like to be done unto you. In other words, he didn't tell him love your neighbors as yourself. He actually wanted to tell him that our sages explain later in the Talmud, referring to the anecdote. But he wanted to get to the point. I mean, like, what is the point of loving? What love means? It's like, do not do unto others which is unpleasant to you. It's like, loving requires being goodness and not doing what is bad. It's like, how do you find goodness? How do you find love? So many of us would define love as goodness, nurturing, caring, protection, all the good things that love has. So love is about good. When this guy's the sage, Hillel, answered answered the question with an opposite response, like the other side of the coin of being loving. Loving has two sides. It's being good, doing goodness, but the other side of the coin is that do not do wrong, do not do bad, do not do what is unpleasant to you, to be done unto you. Don't do it unto others. And then the sage, Hillel says, and the rest is commentary. So it's like, it's not in commentary, as you don't have to worry about this, like it's the words. No. Go to study what the commentary is about. The dozens of volumes of what the Torah wants to say, wants to teach when God asks us to be good. So what does that mean? Read 70 something volumes in the Talmud, the oral Torah, that explains what is being good, what is being loving. So again, the purification of the camp that the Torah is telling us here. See, Hashem spoke to Moses saying, command the children of Israel that they shall expel from the camp everyone with saras. Saras we have said before. Parshat Metzorah and Tasria. There is these white spots of people who usually, as our sages teach actually in the oral Torah, people who speak bad about others. Defamation, slander, basically evil talking. Like making negative statements about others. Even as we have said, our sages have elaborated about that. Even if we are right. It's like the idea, the bottom line of not doing that is not letting the other person get away with it, no. The bottom line of not speaking negatively about someone, even if we are right, about something wrong that he or she may have done. It's about correcting, not criticizing. So the whole point is like, not to tell people, hey, you know, you're a bad person because you did this, or no, you're a bad person, you did this wrong, this so and so, you did it wrong, that's bad. So the idea is not to tell the person that. The idea is to correct the situation. You say, but how do you correct the situation if you don't tell the person that he has done something wrong? Yes, you have a point. But the Torah is inviting us to approach the correction in a different way. So we sit with the person and we say, hey, it seems to be that there's a wrong action on your behalf, which led to this problem. Your actions led to negative consequences. We need to correct that. How we, not you, we correct that. It's like we belong to a cloud, to a unity. We have to help each other. We have to teach each other. We have to be responsible for each other. That is love. So again, we have to emphasize that this arat, this pigmentation, this of the skin, is related to negative talking. So it's like the person who has these signals, these saras. Everyone who has had a sub-emission is like an involuntary seminal emission. And everyone contaminated by a human corpse. We have said, it's interesting because this is a repetition. The Torah repeats, we have to repeat. And again, it's not repetition for repetition. God is telling us we have to be aware all the time about these things. Just be aware that goodness is the permanent, constant reference. Just be aware all the time of goodness. Be good, have good, do good. It's like that different situation. There's a counting here. There's a new beginning. We have been counted again. How many are we now? We have grown. Then there's new people around. Then we have to be reminded again. It's very simple. We do that with our children. We repeat them over and over again to do good, to be good, to pursue goodness for the sake of goodness. It's good to be good. So when they make mistakes, we remind them again. It's been done this way. So we do that. So if we do that with our children, the least that we can expect is that God is doing it to us. And the Torah from beginning to end is a constant, permanent reminders of being and doing good from beginning to end. So different contexts, different situations, but the message is the same. So we have to pay attention. Especially the Torah is our identity card. This is our identity. This is who we are, and this is who we're supposed to be as Jews. Then we have to learn and do accordingly. As simple as that. So this reminder of expelling, they say, male and female alike, as we have said before, shall you expel. To the outside of the camp shall you expel them, so that they should not contaminate the camps among which I dwell. It's like God is dwelling with us. We cannot allow anything bad, evil in His presence. We can't. We have to be sacred. This is either or. God is with us. We cannot be doing something different than His ways and attributes. Likewise, we have said many times in the blog, in our blog, God's love. And we will keep saying it over and over again, that love's ways do not coexist or cohabit with anything different than their qualities. It's like if we're good, we cannot mix. And we have to put the example of the Nazis, because the Nazis is like the best example for that. Nazi Germany. These people love the children. They love the future. They love the country, the homeland, the fatherland. And they believed that they were good people, really, among themselves. But how could be? Yes, that's exactly the point that we want to make. It's a few years, there was a recently published book, a very important book. about this translator. The Americans during the Nuremberg trials, they wanted to know why these people did what they did to the Jews in the war, the ruthlessness, the evil that these people did. It's like, what these people have in their heads. We have to find out that. So they say that the Department of Defense sent a team of psychiatrists to evaluate all these Nazi officers that were being trialed, in Nuremberg. So they assigned these translators, because most of the psychiatrists didn't speak German. So they needed a translator to translate to in this case, should we call them patients? I mean, these criminals, basically. That's their name. So one of these translators, many years later, 60 years later, something like that, decided to publish his memories. I mean, like, what they were answering, what these criminals, what these evil people were answering to the psychiatrist. It's like when the psychiatrist asked them, he said, "Why did you do this?" The plain answer of all of them is like, "We were doing something good." Like that. And then the psychiatrist would ask, it's like, "But that's not good. Just kill innocent people, children, women. Send them to concentration camps and then burn them in ovens, crematories. That's not good." And then they say, "Well, we believe that was good." It's based on what? It's a ruthlessness. This kind of cruelty is unnatural in human consciousness. It's something like planted there, but it's not inherent to human consciousness. Human consciousness is not programmed to do cruelty and to be ruthless. It's not. You have to be trained in order to do that. But these people consider that was okay. They believed, that was part of their nature. It was okay to be inhumane. So we have to be careful about this. It's like, if we're going to be good, we have to be good. And we have to learn how to be good for the sake of goodness. So again, this is not to condone evil. It's like, we're going to be nice and good. We're going to leave all the criminals and all the evil people, get away. No, it's exactly the opposite. We're going to bring these people and we're going to tell them, not anymore. You are not allowed. You were mistrained, miseducated. What people told you that you were doing right, that was wrong for this and this and these reasons, which are the evil that you did caused evil, pain, suffering, denigration. So, it's a learning process. But that's essential. We cannot, this is the double standard, triple standards that we see today in the world. People have several standards. It's like, oh, I like this, but I don't like this. So I do good for this, but I don't do, I like this, but I don't like this. So it's like they became selective. And yes, society is telling them to do that. So there's something wrong with society. So we have to reprogram what society is. It's like things work in a different way based on what the Torah, God, is telling us. We have to remove, we have to expel this kind of mentality. Now, how we translate this into consciousness? What is expelling the contaminated people, the people who touch dead bodies, for instance? We have said this before, it is reminded again in the Torah, we have to go again on this issue. The corpse represents something opposite to life. It's very evident. The moment we touch a dead body, meaning that we're touching something that is dead, that is opposite to life, that actually kills life. So we have to separate from that. What are those things that bring death to a person? I mean, not to a person in this case, I'm sorry, to life. A good life, because life is good. Then everything that is opposite to goodness. That's what a dead corpse means. Everything that is dead is something that doesn't have life. So egos, fantasies, and illusions, everything that we imagine out of feelings and beliefs of lack, those are dead things. They are. You want something more dead than playing in a casino? It's fantasy. It's a complete fantasy. Complete. Now, you say that, do you call money fantasy? No, I'm not talking about it. It's the act of playing with money. That's really a trip. It's a trip. It's like it has nothing to do, doesn't have to do with reality. Yeah, but it's pretty real. If I sit in a casino table, the roulette, I'm sitting there, people are playing. Of course, it's a real act. If you call that real, of course, it's a reality. But the thing is that what does it have to do with our consciousness? I mean, why would I play with money in order to lose it, by the way? We all know that all the probabilities are for the casino to win. So we basically come to a casino to play to lose money. So what kind of reality is that? I mean, what kind of good is that? What kind of being alive is that? So basically it's trapped in something that had nothing to do with life. They always say, yeah, but I enjoy it. For me, that's life. The adrenaline and the feeling and the emotion that I'm losing, that I'm winning. I like these strong emotions. Yeah, but for how long? And it costs you, by the way. You have to pay for it. What is real? What is alive? What is... what has to do with life? Yeah, but the feeling, that's life. For me, that's life. That's feeling alive, that I'm losing money, makes me that I'm alive. It sounds stupid, actually. It does. I mean, at the long run, if you think about it, it's like, yeah, I lost, I shouldn't have been there. The later I recognized that I lost this X amount of money, just playing into a dream to make me feel alive. This was the wrong way, though, to feel alive. It's pretty wrong, by the way, pretty stupid. Then we have to find out what are the ways that we can feel fully alive in our emotions, our feelings, in everything. Like this adrenaline that we can experience in life without losing or without falling into ego's fantasies and illusions. What is that? This is the goodness of love, love's ways and attributes. So I like that better. I don't have to lose anything. Actually, I'm gaining by giving and receiving love. That's pretty much being alive. Actually, since we are born, we have said this over and over again. That's the game. That's what we have to play. We play with our babies. What is the name of the play, of the game? Love. We care for them, nurture them. We're responsible for them. We're happy with them. And it's good that. It's like, hey, I'm alive. The baby's alive, I'm alive. Everybody's alive in the household. Everybody's happy. Everybody understands the meaning of love, the meaning of goodness. That's the whole point. Then we have to expel everything different than that, everything that is dead, that causes death. Everything that is the negative talking, the negative judgment. You have to remove that, you have to expel that from the camp. What is the camp? The camp is life. Yes, there was a camp in the desert, people were camping, with tents. Sure. But we understand that when God is telling us, I'm dwelling in you, among you. And God is good, we know that. It's evident. He's telling us that in every way. Then we have to be with things that brings life. We have to have in the camp of life goodness, because God is there. He's providing the goodness. We have to understand this in this context. We have to bring this into our consciousness. This is not an anecdote that happened 3,300 and some years ago. This is now. The Torah is eternal. We have to understand it now. Now, most of civilized world, they don't fall in kind of the type of idolatry of many of those times. But we still have replacing the idols. Yeah, some people are still bending to idols of wood and whatever, in places of cult. What about those who don't go to those places of cult, to bend to images that are also idolaters? But they replace the idol in the places of cult for egos, fantasies, and illusions. They translated those things into the consciousness. So Hasbe Shalom, we're not saying that the Torah and the Hebrew scriptures are obsolete because we don't have that anymore. Of course we have that. It's different, but the syndrome is the same. It's not necessarily negative talking that we're talking about here. We're talking about destroying other people's integrity. Even if that person is not necessarily an example of integrity. But the lesson is here, to be good. Again, that's the bottom line. We have to pay attention to that. So God is reminding us. The children of Israel did so. They expelled them to the outside of the camp, and Hashem had spoken to Moses. As Hashem had spoken to Moses, so did the children of Israel do. It's like it's been said twice. It's like the children of Israel did that, and yes, the children of Israel did what what Hashem told Moses to tell them. So what does that mean, the repetition? God is there. They were doing this for God, and they were doing this because they were told that it's the right thing to do. There are two ways to understand that God is telling me, does it with me? I have to do this because God is with me. I cannot allow anything different than God's ways and attributes within my consciousness. Because God is with me. If I attract something different than that, God is going to go away. Why? Because He doesn't blend with anything different than His ways and attributes. So be aware. It's up to us. We have free will. In Behukotai, the last portion of the book of Vaikra, Leviticus, there were the blessings and the curses. You remember that 2 weeks ago. The blessings, that's the reference, goodness, as we said before. Then we have to choose the blessing. Same thing here. So then after that, immediately juxtaposed, which makes perfect sense, like after you expel everything negative from your consciousness, take it out of the camp, out of life. Don't bring contamination here, either for negative talking, either for sexual energy misuse, touching a corpse. I'm dwelling with you, says God. Then immediately after that, a warning against stealing. It's like, why is talking about stealing? I mean, we're talking about, bad negative talking, touching a dead body. So what about stealing? What had to do with that? But stealing is something that is part of the problem. And the fact that stealing is connected to touching a dead body and a sexual emission and talking negatively, stealing it falls in that category, actually. That's why it's close to it. So the Torah is not starting a new chapter or anything like that, or a new paragraph. It's continuing saying in the same, it's contextual. We have to pay attention about this. We have said that before in the blog and in these videos, probably a few times, that we have to understand the context in which things have been said. Actually, most of the miscommunication that we have in day-to-day life is because things takes everything out of context. So what is taken out of context? It's not that they don't understand what people are telling them. They do understand. I mean, the words are clear. So it's not about phrasing or saying things in a particular way. No. It's clear. The context is the references we have here when people tell us something. Actually, a simple example. That clouds in the sky. And immediately we look up the sky and we see clouds in the sky. That's basically the context of it. So we check that the context of the expression of that clouds in the sky is that indeed there are clouds in the sky. But taking it out of context would be, it's like this guy is telling me that there's something not clear within myself or in my thinking. He's trying to tell me something. So the guy may say, I didn't mean that, I just meant that there are clouds in the sky. Again, everything is contextualized. What is the context in our consciousness? It's like most people, especially in the internet, that happens a lot. And that's more evident because we don't have a personal, person-to-person communication. It's virtual. We don't know what the other person is thinking when we write something. And that's exactly the problem. The problem is sitting in the screen of the computer and is feeling bad. Really, has a bad day. Somebody says something to him or her. This person can take it as an aggravating, like adding salt to his or her wounds. Instead of what this guy is telling me this. So why? Because the context in which the person is reading the chat or the message is their mood. That's the context. Or his or her ideas about what those words are said, mentioned, written. It's very complicated. Because everything we learn Everything we see. Not just in the virtual world, but reading. Like some people can read the Torah, for instance. If the people is not being trained, educated to study and understand the Torah in the context of the Torah, we can understand many things. That's one of the issues between the different streams in Judaism. So take the context of the Torah very literal, or the ethical aspect of it, which is fine. But then some people who try to go deeper, like the Hasidic tradition that we apply here in our blog and in these commentaries, we try to go a little deeper on that. Then we have a problem with people who do not do that. Because they said to us, hey, you're taking this out of context. I mean, the Torah is being clear. The oral Torah is being even clear about what is said. Why you guys are looking for something deeper than that? Really happens. So for those who do not know the Hasidic movement, the founders of the Hasidic movement, in this case, it was one, then there was branches. They were persecuted for decades by the traditional Jewish orthodoxy. So why these people are doing like the love of God and that kind of thing, and being Hesed, the Hasid come from there, the loving kindness. What about this loving kindness? Just be good. Forget about loving kindness. You just do the right thing. Be ethical. That's what it's all about. So when you bring this kind of loving kindness and being jumping around and being happy, what's the point? They have a legitimate concern. So this is not about that some people were right and some were wrong. It's the approach, it's the context that we're saying. So the Hasidic answer was like, hey, we understand the Torah in the same way that you understand it. But a reference, in this case, the context that we are inviting here, besides that, the one that is already there, is God's love. That's the reference for us. We're not doing anything wrong. We're not condoning evil, as Shalom. We're doing exactly like you. We're very ethical. But we emphasize in being loving. Really like having that reference all the time. See, like from a loving perspective, context, then everything comes ethical, everything comes good. Everything comes to do the right thing. You're just keeping that reference, that Hesed. They're not contradicting anything, has Shalom. Absolutely not. They're just bringing a deeper understanding of being Jewish. A deeper feeling. The other day, one of the sages said, it's like they bring the sweetness. I like the word when he said it. It's like this Orthodox guy, like, it's not a Hasidic person, it's recognized. They brought sweetness. The sweetness of Judaism. It's like, wow. He was praising them. I'm not Hasidic, but hey, these people have brought so much sweetness to us. This sweetness that brings Jews back to Judaism. Then we have to understand that in the context of things. So let's make our context the goodness all the time. It's like everything tells us something. We read something. Let's see it through the frame, to the context of goodness. Really. Even it doesn't sound good. It's like, so just try to understand the positive aspect of it. Maybe it could be a political statement. A lot of people voice their ideologies, It's like, what do they mean by this? It's like, oh, if there's no justice, there's no peace. It's one of the slogans in the Martin Luther King's slogans. It's in the Torah. We know that. See, Dr. King was not Jewish, but he read the Torah. So he understood, we have to be righteous, we have to be good. Then peace will come. So he understood the context. And he said, we have to place everything in the context of justice. This is righteousness. Bringing the truth. Making truth prevail, the goodness prevail. No segregation, no discrimination, no abuse, no exploitation, no undignifying things. So we can have peace. So we have to understand everything in the right context, and the context is the Torah. The context is goodness. That's the references. So we remain in the camp of life, where God dwells with us. So the Torah then continues again with more reminders about purity, jealousies. Then later mentioned the Nazarite. The Nazarite was the person who was completely devoted to God. Did something very sweet here that said, for the crown of his God is upon his head. I mean, the Nazarite is the person who was devoted from the beginning of life to goodness. So it's like, it was not like everybody was that, but God's like the idea that every once in a while few people are like that. It's in the Torah. So he's not saying don't do this. Do it. It's a good thing. These people who is completely devoted to it is a good example to follow. The crown of his God is upon his head. Know what that means? The crown of God. What is the crown of God? So please don't picture like something like, like... What is the crown of God? Let's go a little bit beyond, deeper. It's his glory. It's like, that's the symbol of his glory. What is the symbol of his glory? God's love. That is in our crown. Where we put the crown? In our head. What represents the head? Consciousness. Like full awareness, that's the head. So the head of the Nazarite is crowned with the crown of God. So it's like God is telling us, I'm going to give you something of me to you. I'm going to put you my crown, says God. It's here in the Torah. It's like, it's a probably, not probably, it is indeed a matter of fact, the highest honor that anybody can have. But again, let's understand this deeper, not from an ego perspective. It's like, oh, I'm going to be good, so God is going to give me his crown and put it on my head. This doesn't work that way, please. Let's honor ourselves. Having God's glory from where everything comes, that's his crown. All creations come from that crown. It's like the main purpose of God behind his creation is love. It's like, I love so much these guys. My creation. That I'm going to give creation to them. I'm going to give them life. I'm going to sustain them. I'm going to give them air. I'm going to give them water. I'm going to give them everything. God's creation, we have to re-emphasize this, is an act of God's love. This is not an experiment like God is going to say, I'm going to make a little lab called the universe and da. No. It's clear the Torah is telling us that it's not so. He saw that the light was good. And it was good. It's about goodness. Never forget that. So the Nazarite is a reminder again in this Parsha of reminders. He said, all the days of his abstinence, he is holy to Hashem. Abstinence from what? So you say. Alcohol. I mean, the Torah talks about things. These are about abstinence, about the material things, the extra material things that we usually enjoy, but ultimately we don't need. So it's like our devotion to God is complete. It's like I have no devotion for anything material anymore. To abstain from the material pleasures, delights, in order to focus my attention exclusively in God's will. This is the Merkavah, as they said it in the Kabbalah, Kabbalistic term. It's like the chariot where God sits. Those are the prophets, by the way. They became a chariot. It's like, I'm not a human person anymore. I'm just a chariot. God, sit on me, and I take you wherever you want me to take you. It's the Merkabah. That's the chariot. That's the Nazarite. So who of us doesn't want God to be riding on us? Who doesn't want to hit somebody there? We all do. We want to know our Creator. And if our Creator is giving us the opportunity to sit on us, I mean, like as our chariots, the vessels, the consciousness, where He can manifest His will, His ways and attributes. That's the ultimate desire, the most important, the highest desire of every human being who believes in God, obviously. This is pending that God's created us. So, then this chapter 6 of the book of Bamidbar, Numbers. Then they talk about reminders about sudden contaminations. And then the Parshat continues in the middle. This is very important, with the priestly blessings. So the Kohanim, the priests, are commanded by God to bless the people of Israel with love. It's interesting. We're talking about God's love here. It's a reminder here. What is the priest? We have to repeat it again. It's our awareness, the awareness of our permanent connection with God. That's what the priesthood represents. That's Vayikra, by the way. Remember that we said that the book of Vayikra represents our connection with God. Then Bamidbar, our relationship with God, based on that connection, by the way. It's not separate. Everything is united in the Torah. We were created first, the book of creation. We were given an identity as Jews in the book of Exodus, second. So the identity, starting from being created by God, lead us to a connection with God, to relate to Him and to fulfill a destiny. That's the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, the last one. That's the whole point. That's the whole circle. So, another reminder, the priesthood is blessing us. We will comment that in detail in other commentary. because we have to make a whole commentary of these three blessings. They are very deep, they're very essential. They're commanded by God to be given with love. There's a loving connection between this permanent awareness called the priesthood, the awareness of our connection with God, and as the rest of the consciousness. It's a loving connection. It's very important. Okay, and after the blessings, which is synthesis, like after we're blessed, then in this blessing, in this completion, so to speak, of our connection with God in purity, in sacredness, then every tribal leader brings the same offer to God. They were commanded to bring offerings, the so-called sacrifices, which again we have to emphasize and repeat that sacrifices, the word sacrifice in Latin means doing the sacred, doing what is sacred. That's the offerings. It's being sacred and bringing this sacredness to God, this goodness that we were talking about. There's nothing abstract here, abstract. We have to say it over and over again. What we offer to God that He likes, the smell of our offering that He enjoys, is the goodness that He's bestowing on us, and we bring it back to Him by being good. So it's like, this is what I have done good, Father, accept my offering. And God says to us, smells good. It's like, your goodness is good. It's the same goodness that I have given you, that you're bringing back to me as a token of what I have commanded you to do. And our sages point out something very, very, very important, that every single offering of every tribe was exactly the same. Meaning that every quality represented by the tribes, every skill, talent, creative potentials of every tribe makes the same offering, make the same goodness in their own way to God. So if we're merchants, we trade in goodness. If we're judges, we judge in goodness. If we're farmers, we farm in goodness. If we're warriors, we war for goodness, in goodness. If we are leaders, we lead in goodness, and so on. Then we bring that goodness, that good deeds to God. Those are our offerings in our own way. As warriors, as artists, as judges, as leaders, as farmers. So, then the parasha ends with Moses entering the tabernacle. Let's read it to close this commentary. So when Moses arrived to the tent of meeting to speak with him, God, he heard the voice speaking to him from atop the cover that was upon the ark of the testimony, the ark of the covenant. From between the two cherubim, he spoke to him. The God's presence was in the tabernacle. So it's like the cycle, the circle of this parasha begins with the finishing of the counting and the duties of the 4 clans of the Levites, which represents our connection with God, with the presence of God in this connection, which is the tabernacle, which is the priesthood, in this case the tabernacle. So we hope that we have communicated the message of getting a view, a deeper view, more profound understanding about what God is telling us in terms of our Jewish identity, which is the Torah. So I have an amazing week full of abundant blessings, full of the sacredness of doing goodness after being good in order to do goodness. Shabbat Shalom, and until next week.